Breaking tonight, a diplomatic explosion no one saw coming. Inside a tense Washington summit, Keir Starmer has just publicly rejected a multi-billion-pound oil pact proposed by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And he did it right in front of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. The moment, captured live on international television, sent shockwaves through every corridor of power from Riyadh to Westminster. Within seconds, the world saw it. The Prime Minister of Britain refusing one of the most powerful men in the Middle East, while the President of the United States sat between them, stunned into silence. Inside the hall, witnesses say MBS's expression hardened instantly. His hand, once extended in diplomatic calm, fell to his side like a blade. His advisers whispered urgently in Arabic. Trump leaned forward, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between the two men as if watching history fracture. Moments later, the Saudi delegation stood up, without a word, and walked out. Reporters say Starmer's face went pale. Realizing what had just been unleashed, the British press didn't wait. Headlines screamed diplomatic disaster and diplomatic defiance, while Arab media called it an insult to the kingdom. For months, the Saudi deal had been Starmer's secret pressure point. It promised cheaper oil, economic stability, and crucial investment for a struggling post-Brexit Britain. But hidden within that pact were conditions Starmer could never publicly defend. Analysts claim the agreement demanded a silent British withdrawal from key human rights inquiries into Saudi operations in Yemen. To sign would mean betraying international law. To refuse, as Starmer did tonight, meant defying the global oil order itself. And now he's done it on live TV, with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia watching him burn the bridge. Within hours, markets began to shake. The pound slipped. Energy analysts warned that fuel costs could surge within days. British citizens, already crushed by inflation, took to social media in fury. Some called Starmer brave, a man standing for ethics over economics. Others called him reckless, the leader who had just doomed the nation to an energy crisis it could not afford. Meanwhile, MBS wasted no time. Minutes after leaving the summit, Saudi state television aired an emergency broadcast announcing a full review of trade and oil cooperation with the United Kingdom. In diplomatic language, that's a declaration of economic war. Sources inside the Saudi embassy confirmed it. MBS had ordered his ministers to redirect all pending British oil shipments to more loyal partners. Within the same hour, Trump's team released a statement saying he was deeply concerned by the Prime Minister's tone, calling for respectful dialogue between allies. But make no mistake, the message was clear. Britain had just isolated itself in front of the two most powerful oil and energy forces on the planet. In Downing Street, phones rang non-stop. Advisors scrambled, unsure whether to spin the move as courage or chaos. As the dust settled, one image began flooding the internet. Starmer, standing alone at the summit table, the Saudi and American flags behind him, his pen untouched. To his supporters, it was an act of moral defiance. To his critics, it was suicide dressed as diplomacy. Parliament insiders whispered of immediate backlash. Labour MPs, already uneasy over his foreign policy choices, called emergency meetings. One anonymous cabinet member told reporters, "He played hero for 5 minutes. Now we all pay for it." Yet deeper questions now ripple through London's political veins. Was this decision truly about human rights? Or was Starmer trying to send a message not to Riyadh, but to Washington? Some insiders claim Starmer had intelligence that Saudi negotiators planned to use the pact to pressure Britain into defense concessions. Others whisper that a transatlantic rift has been brewing quietly for weeks, one that even the king himself had been warned about. But perhaps the biggest question of all tonight is this. If MBS has indeed struck back, how far will he go? Will he unleash an oil embargo, financial retaliation, or something even darker? Something Britain isn't prepared to face. Because as of this moment, the storm has begun, and no one in Westminster knows how to stop it. By morning, the headlines were no longer diplomatic. They were apocalyptic. Britain faces oil blockade, Saudi retaliation, begins Downing Street in panic. The chain reaction was faster than anyone imagined. Overnight, the global oil market convulsed. Saudi tankers bound for the port of Felixstowe were rerouted mid-sea. British fuel distributors received cryptic cancellation notices from Riyadh. Within 6 hours, petrol prices across the UK spiked by 40%. Panic spread like wildfire. Motorways clogged. News channels looped footage of frantic drivers filling every container they could find. In Westminster, chaos reigned. Starmer's cabinet split in two, one half urging reconciliation, the other demanding retaliation. Foreign Secretary David Lammy called the situation manageable, but insiders leaked that he had been on the phone with Washington begging for emergency fuel shipments. Donald Trump, standing beside MBS in a televised press briefing, offered no comfort. The United States will always stand by its partners who respect trade and strength. It was a diplomatic dagger aimed straight at Britain's heart. For the first time in decades, the so-called special relationship looked fractured beyond repair. In Riyadh, MBS smiled for the cameras. His message was simple. Energy is loyalty. The UK has chosen independence. Now it must live with the price. The words echoed across global news networks. Analysts called it economic humiliation on a royal scale. In London, Starmer faced the House of Commons, his voice cold, his expression stone. He defended his decision as a stand for principles in an age of compromise. But the benches behind him were restless. Murmurs filled the chamber, whispers of no confidence. Even Chancellor Rachel Reeves appeared distant, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then came the leak. A confidential Treasury memo, classified eyes only, revealed that Britain's strategic oil reserves would run dry within 32 days if Saudi sanctions continued. 32 days before blackouts, rationing, and economic paralysis, the opposition pounced. Nigel Farage went live on GB News, declaring, "This is the price of arrogance. Starmer's pride has cost every working Brit." Protesters poured into the streets of Manchester, London, Birmingham. Crowds carried signs reading, "Resign now and bring back fuel." The sound of fury filled the air. Meanwhile, the royal palace broke its silence. King Charles, in a carefully worded statement, urged calm dialogue and the restoration of stability. But behind palace walls, insiders described growing tension. The king, known for his environmental diplomacy, had reportedly warned Starmer weeks earlier not to antagonize Saudi leadership. The warning went unheeded. Now the monarchy itself was being dragged into the storm. Critics accused the palace of quietly aligning with Saudi interests, while Republicans accused Starmer of hiding behind the crown. The constitutional fabric of Britain trembled as two pillars of power, the Prime Minister and the monarch, drifted toward collision. In the United States, Trump's reaction grew more theatrical by the hour. He praised MBS as a strong leader who understands loyalty, while describing Starmer as a confused globalist who doesn't know what's good for his people. American energy giants, smelling opportunity, offered to fill the gap, but at a premium Britain could barely afford. Economists warned that accepting such deals would trap the UK in long-term dependence, while rejecting them would mean fuel rationing and industrial shutdowns. Every path led to crisis. Every choice carried a cost. And through it all, MBS moved like a chess master. Saudi diplomats began courting European leaders, France, Italy, even Germany, offering discounted energy in exchange for isolating Britain. The European Union, still smarting from Brexit, saw an opportunity. EU officials met in emergency session, discussing whether to suspend UK trade preferences. The betrayal was slow, deliberate, and surgical. One by one, Britain's alliances frayed like old rope. By the third day, Downing Street was surrounded by protesters. Banners waved, police lines tightened. Inside, aides whispered of a resignation speech being drafted in secret, but Starmer refused to yield. "I will not be blackmailed by oil," he told the press. His words defiant, his voice strained. Yet even his allies sensed the walls closing in. The crisis was no longer about policy. It had become a test of survival, pride, and legacy. As night fell over London, a new rumour spread across diplomatic circles. Sources claimed that MBS was preparing a second blow, not economic this time, but personal. Something that could end Starmer's leadership permanently. Some say it involves leaked intelligence from the summit itself. Others whisper of a secret recording, a conversation that could destroy him. But what exactly did MBS take from that closed-door meeting with Trump? And how far is the Crown Prince willing to go to bring Britain to its knees? The answers may decide whether this is merely a crisis or the beginning of Britain's political collapse. The night Britain broke began quietly. Rain fell over Whitehall like a curtain, hiding the faces of police officers standing guard outside Number 10. Inside, Keir Starmer sat in the cabinet room, surrounded by exhausted ministers. The lights were dim, the mood darker still. The emergency meeting had stretched for hours. Accusations, blame, fear. Phones buzzed with updates from embassies, none of them good. Every message from Riyadh carried the same phrase: until further notice, all cooperation suspended. The nation was bleeding oil, credibility, and control. Then, without warning, a single notification appeared on every major British screen: CNN, Sky, BBC. 3 words flashed in red: Saudi leak released. Within minutes, the footage was everywhere. A hidden recording from the Washington summit. The source unverified. The content devastating. The video showed a private conversation between Starmer, MBS, and Donald Trump, moments before the live conference began. The Prime Minister, visibly frustrated, could be heard saying, "Britain doesn't take orders from autocrats or oil barons. We'll stand alone if we must." Trump's face stiffened. MBS's eyes narrowed. The clip cut abruptly, but the damage was done. To millions of viewers, Starmer sounded arrogant, insulting, reckless. Social media exploded with fury. Saudi news outlets looped the clip with Arabic subtitles, calling it the British insult. Within the hour, MBS addressed the Saudi nation in a televised statement that sent tremors across the world. Standing before the Saudi flag, he declared, "If Britain wishes to stand alone, then let them find fuel in their pride." The crowd behind him erupted in applause. Oil markets tumbled again. London's financial district plunged into silence. Screens flickered red as the pound sank to its lowest point in modern history. Inside Downing Street, Starmer slammed his fist on the table, shouting that tape was doctored. But no one listened. The narrative had already been written, and it was not his. By dawn, the palace made its move. In an extraordinary break from convention, King Charles summoned Starmer for a private audience. Courtiers whispered that the meeting was tense, almost hostile. The king, calm but visibly strained, reportedly told him, "The nation looks to its leaders for restraint, not defiance." Starmer fired back, "With respect, Your Majesty, it was defiance that built this nation." The silence that followed was said to be colder than the November air outside. For the first time in living memory, the Prime Minister and the monarch stood on opposite sides of a national crisis, one demanding reconciliation, the other dignity. Meanwhile, inside Parliament, rebellion brewed. Several senior Labour MPs tendered their resignations live on air. Rachel Reeves appeared on ITV and declared that the government no longer commands the trust of its people. Her words hit harder than any Saudi embargo. Overnight, markets crashed further, and within hours, a formal motion of no confidence was tabled. The opposition smelled blood. Nigel Farage appeared outside Westminster, waving a petrol receipt and shouting, "This is your leadership, Britain. A full tank costs more than your rent." The crowd roared with laughter and anger. Starmer's
Two
authority,
jobs, one
once
at Goldman Sachs and one
ironclad,
at the Bank of
was
England.
disintegrating
Salary
in real time. Then came the unexpected twist. MI6, acting under emergency security powers, traced the source of the leaked audio file, not to Riyadh, but to a private Washington communications firm linked to the Trump campaign. The discovery detonated through the intelligence community like a bomb. If true, it meant MBS might not have leaked the recording at all. The real puppet master could have been the White House, using Saudi outrage as a smokescreen to corner Britain into economic submission. The Prime Minister, desperate for leverage, ordered